You wake up with a fever. No thermometer, no pharmacy, no doctor waiting behind a white door. Just heat inside your body, dirt under your fingers, and a small group of people watching your breathing in the dark. For most of human history, this was not a medical emergency in the modern sense. It was life. For roughly 300,000 years, your ancestors survived without hospitals, antibiotics, vaccines, X-rays, surgery rooms, or plastic bottles full of pills. Yet they were not helpless. They were not just waiting to die. They had eyes, they had memory, they had fire plants, social care, and a surprisingly sharp understanding of what bodies needed. So how did ancient humans survive without medicine? The first answer is simple. They did not survive alone. Before pills, your best medicine was other people. If you broke your leg on a hunt, you could not walk it off. If you were bitten, burned, weak, pregnant, feverish, or too sick to gather food, your survival depended on whether someone else cared enough to stay near you. That sounds emotional, but it is also archaeological. At Shanidar Cave, in what is now Iraq, archaeologists found Neanderthal remains that changed how scientists imagined prehistoric care. One individual, often called Shanidar, one had serious injuries. His arm was damaged. His vision may have been impaired. His body showed signs of long survival after trauma. This matters because he probably could not have lived for years without help from others. In plain English, the bones suggest care. Not a hospital, not surgery, care. Food brought to someone who could not easily hunt. Protection from cold. A place near the fire. Maybe someone cleaning wounds, helping him move, or making sure he was not abandoned. The archaeologist Ralph Selecki helped bring Shanidar to wider attention in the 20th century, and later researchers continued debating exactly what the evidence means. But the deeper point remains powerful. Long before modern medicine, humans and close human relatives were already doing something deeply medical. They were keeping the vulnerable alive. That may be the oldest treatment your species ever had. But care alone was not enough. Your ancestors also watched nature like their lives depended on it, because they did. Every plant was a possible answer. A leaf might calm pain. A bark might upset the stomach. A root might reduce fever. A berry might feed you. A berry might kill you. There was no label saying safe or dangerous. The world was the label. Taste-smell reaction, memory and teaching were the system. When one person discovered that a bitter plant helped a stomach ache, that discovery could become group knowledge. When another plant caused vomiting, that warning could survive for generations. This is not fantasy. Anthropologists have documented deep plant knowledge among modern hunter-gatherer and indigenous communities around the world. That does not mean every modern group is a frozen copy of the Stone Age. It means human beings living close to landscapes can develop extraordinary knowledge of plants, animals, seasons, and bodies. Richard Evans Schultes, one of the major figures in ethnobotany, studied how people use plants as medicine, food, poison, and ritual tools. Ethnobotany means the study of how human cultures use plants. In simple terms, it asks a very human question. Which plant does what? Ancient humans could not write this knowledge down, so they carried it in stories, in demonstrations, in warnings, in memory. A child would learn which leaves were safe to chew, which smoke kept insects away, which resin sealed a wound, which bitter plant should never be touched, which roots were only used by elders who knew exactly what they were doing. The pharmacy was the landscape, but the landscape was dangerous. So ancient medicine was never just about finding helpful plants. It was about avoiding the wrong ones. Imagine you were living near a river valley. You know where the edible tubers grow after rain. You know which tree resin becomes sticky near fire. You know a certain leaf makes the mouth numb. You know another makes the stomach twist violently. You know smoke from some plants drives mosquitoes away, while smoke from others burns the throat. Now imagine getting a cut on your foot. Today that sounds small. Back then, it could become fatal. A cut could become infected. Infection means harmful microbes enter the body and multiply. Your ancestors did not know the word microbe because microscopes did not exist. But they knew what happened when a wound turned red, swollen, hot, foul-smelling, or full of pus. They saw patterns. They remembered outcomes. So they did practical things. They washed. They covered. They rested. They used heat. They avoided more dirt when possible. They used plant fibers, bark, of moss, animal hide, or ash to protect the wound. Some of this would have helped. Some of it would not. Some of it might have made things worse. That is the hard truth. Ancient humans were observant, but they were not magical. Many people died from injuries that modern medicine would easily treat. A deep cut, a bad tooth infection, childbirth complications, diarrhea, pneumonia, or a broken bone in the wrong place could end a life. So the real story is not that ancient humans had secret perfect medicine. They did not. The real story is that they survived by combining every available advantage: care, knowledge, fire, rest, food, plants, ritual, and luck. Fire may have been one of the greatest medicines before medicine, not because fire cures disease by itself. Because fire changes everything around the body. Fire gives warmth during cold nights, and cold weakens people fast. Fire cooks food, making many foods softer, safer, and easier to digest. Digest means breaking food down so your body can use it. If you're sick, digesting hard raw food is expensive for the body. Cooked food can be a gift. Fire also boils water when containers are available. Boiling kills many dangerous organisms in water, even if ancient humans did not know the invisible cause. The practice becomes common much later in many settings because you need suitable containers and cultural habits around boiling. But once people had ways to heat liquids, fire could make water and broths safer. Fire hardens wooden tools. Fire keeps predators away. Fire creates ash. Fire creates smoke. Smoke is complicated. It can harm lungs. It can also repel insects. It can preserve meat. It can change plant chemicals. It can turn a camp into a safer space. In a world where mosquitoes, flies, ticks, and parasites could carry danger, smoke near a campfire was more than atmosphere. It was a barrier. Not a perfect one, but enough to matter. And then there was food. Modern people often separate food from medicine. Your ancestors could not. Food was medicine because starvation made every illness more dangerous. A fever burns energy. A wound needs protein to repair tissue. Pregnancy needs calories. A nursing mother needs food. A child recovering from diarrhea needs water and nutrients. An elder with weak teeth needs softer meals. So one of the most powerful ancient treatments was feeding the sick. That sounds too simple. It was not. Feeding someone who cannot feed themselves costs the group time and energy. It means sharing meat tubers, berries, marrow, fish, eggs, honey, or cooked plants. It means someone else eats a little less, walks a little farther, or stays behind while others move. Care has a cost. That is why it matters. Bioarchaeologist Lorna Tilley has written about the archaeology of care, a field that studies how injured or disabled people may have survived in the past. The idea is plain but profound. When bones show long-term survival after serious injury, you can sometimes infer that people helped, not always in perfect detail, but enough to ask a better question. Who kept this person alive? This changes the image of ancient life. It was not just strong hunters and weak victims. It was networks of dependence. Children depended on adults. Adults depended on the group. Elders carried knowledge. The injured could recover if others helped long enough. In that sense, medicine began before medicine had a name. But there was another tool your ancestors used when illness did not make sense: meaning. When a person trembled with fever, heard voices, had seizures, bled strangely, or died suddenly, the group needed an explanation. Without germ theory, without anatomy, textbooks, without blood tests, the invisible causes of illness were terrifying. So people built stories around sickness: spirits, broken taboos, angry ancestors, poisoning, bad winds, a curse, a lost soul. Modern people may look down on this, but be careful. Meaning can change behavior. Ritual can organize care. A healer can focus attention. A ceremony can bring the group together around one suffering person. A chant, smoke, touch rhythms, or repeated action can reduce fear, signal seriousness, and create the feeling that something is being done. That feeling matters, not because belief replaces biology, because fear is biological too. A terrified patient breathes differently, sleeps worse, refuses food, panics, gives up. A calm person may still die, but calm can help the body endure. Ritual may not kill bacteria, but it can hold a group together long enough to provide care, warmth, and food. The placebo effect is a modern term for real body changes caused by expectation and belief. Placebo means a treatment with no active drug, but the brain and body can still respond. Ancient humans did not know the word placebo, but they knew that words touch rhythm smoke, and attention could change how a sick person felt. This does not make ancient healing fake. It makes it human. Now reconstruct a day. You are not in a hospital. You are in a small camp near trees and stone. The morning is cold. Your throat burns. Your body feels heavy. You try to stand, but your legs shake. Someone notices. That is the first treatment. An older woman touches your forehead. She does not say fever as a medical category the way a doctor might. But she knows heat. She has felt it in children, hunters, mothers, elders, and herself. She has seen who recovers and who does not. She tells you to sit. That is the second treatment. Rest. A younger person brings water. Another adds wood to the fire. Someone gives you soft-cooked food, maybe marrow broth, mashed roots, or chewed food for a child. Someone else burns a plant whose smoke keeps insects away. An elder picks bitter leaves used when the stomach turns. Nobody knows molecules. Nobody needs the word pharmacology, which means how substances affect the body. They know this plant sometimes helps. Hours pass. Maybe you recover. Maybe you do not. That uncertainty shaped ancient life. Your ancestors lived inside risk in a way modern people rarely feel minute by minute. Medicine was not a guarantee. It was a set of chances. Every treatment was a bet based on memory. But some bets were surprisingly good. Willow bark, for example, contains compounds related to salicylic acid, which connects to the history of aspirin. Aspirin is a modern drug, not a Stone Age pill. But the broader idea matters. Some plants really do contain chemicals that reduce pain or inflammation. Inflammation is the body's swelling and heat response to injury or infection. It can help, but too much can hurt. Other plants can numb pain, stop bleeding, repel insects, trigger vomiting, or affect mood. Ötzi the Iceman. A naturally mummified man from about 5,300 years ago, found in the Alps, carried pieces of birch polypore fungus. Some researchers have suggested the fungus may have had medicinal uses possibly connected to parasites or infection, though interpretations are cautious. The important point is that ancient people carried selected natural materials with them. They were not random walkers in the wilderness. They were planners. Ötzi also shows the darker side. His body had injuries worn, joints tattoos, intestinal parasites, and signs of a hard life. He is not proof that ancient medicine was easy. He is proof that survival required constant management of pain movement, food tools, and danger. Ancient humans also used their bodies as diagnostic tools. A diagnostic tool is something used to figure out what is wrong. Your ancestors had no lab reports, but they had senses. They smelled infection. They saw swelling. They felt heat. They heard coughing. They watched appetite. They noticed stool, urine, blood, skin color, breathing, and behavior. That sounds primitive only until you realize doctors still begin this way. Look, listen, touch, ask, observe change. The difference is that modern medicine adds instruments and tested treatments. Ancient medicine relied on repeated human attention. Attention can save lives. If a child becomes dehydrated, someone who keeps offering water may make the difference. Dehydrated means the body has lost too much fluid. If an elder becomes too cold, someone who moves them near fire may save them. If a wound opens again, someone who rewraps it may help. If a hunter cannot walk, someone who stays behind may keep predators away. Survival was often boring care repeated over and over. Not dramatic, not cinematic, essential. And then came the counterintuitive twist. In some ways, ancient humans survived without medicine because they had fewer of certain modern problems. Not fewer problems overall, fewer modern crowd diseases. Before farming, before permanent towns, before dense cities, many groups lived in smaller, more mobile bands. This did not make them safe. They still faced injuries, parasites, childbirth, danger, hunger, and infections. But some epidemic diseases spread best when many people live close together with domesticated animals, stored waste, and constant contact. Agriculture changed that. When humans began farming, they lived closer to animals, stored grain that attracted pests, drank from more contaminated water sources, and spent more time in crowded settlements. Archaeologists and biological anthropologists have long discussed how farming brought both more food and more disease in many regions. The trade-off was brutal. More calories sometimes, more crowding, more inequality, more infections. So the story flips. Hunter-gatherers did not have modern medicine, but they also did not always face the same disease world that later farmers and city dwellers created. Ancient survival was not simple progress from stupid to smart. It was a shifting balance. Some dangers were worse in the deep past. Some became worse after civilization. Some became worse after cities. Some became worse after global travel. Some became better only with sanitation, vaccines, antibiotics, and modern surgery. Your body today is living at the end of all those experiments. When you take a pill, you are not separate from ancient medicine. You are standing on top of it. Modern medicine did not appear from nowhere. It grew from observation plant, knowledge, wound care, anatomy, chemistry, trial error, and thousands of years of noticing what helped and what killed. But there is also a warning. Ancient humans survived without medicine, partly because most people who could not survive did not survive. That is harsh. A baby born too early. A mother with obstructed labor. A person with appendicitis. A hunter with a deep puncture wound. A child with severe diarrhea. A tooth infection spreading into the jaw. Today, many of these can be treated. Back then, many were death sentences. So do not romanticize it. Your ancestors were tough because the world was unforgiving. They were knowledgeable because ignorance killed. They were social because loneliness killed. They were observant because one wrong plant could kill. They were careful because one infected cut could kill. Ancient medicine was not a cabinet. It was a relationship with the world. It was knowing which plant to pick, which fire to keep alive, which wound to cover, which child needed water, which elder needed warmth, which hunter needed rest, and which story could keep a frightened person from falling apart. That is what survived. And it still lives inside you. When you bring soup to a sick friend, you are doing something older than civilization. When you sit beside someone in pain, you are practicing a medicine older than writing. When you rest, drink water, keep warm, clean a wound, or listen to your body, you are touching the oldest layer of human care. You wake up with a fever, but now you are not alone in the dark. Behind every modern pill, every white room, and every doctor's hand, there is a much older scene. A fire, a plant, a body in pain, and someone who chose to stay.